Hey, Roger Martin here from Billings, Montana. This is Judge Judy, and Jeanine Pirro, anyhow, she's talking about Comey and what a crime he's committed. But the senator or congressman from Nunes from California has something to say here. I think it's just as important, if not more important.
Because this cannot end here. But joining me now to talk about this issue and much more is Republican Congressman from California, Devin Nunes. He's live in Fresno, where the Fresno State Bulldogs are playing the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Congressman, thanks so much for joining me. And by the way, with that, you've got a microphone there. You're holding on to it yourself. You look like a football spokesperson. How is it out there?
I feel like I'm reporting. I feel like I'm reporting live from a college football game, Judge. We could just start the game here, like a pregame show.
Well, you know, we got our own game here. It's a political game that's going on in this country. And, you know, I just want to continue with the one thing, the spinning from that open that I intended to use last week. You know, Jim Comey has been able to avoid prosecution, even though it's clear that the Attorney General could have prosecuted him. Do you have hope that at some point going forward, and it's a very quick answer on this one, that he will face justice in the criminal justice system for the corruption that went on in the FBI under his tutelage?
Well, Judge, I can tell from your opening that you're probably not a big fan of Mr. Comey. We're still paying for his sins. The intelligence community for decades will pay for his sins if people aren't held accountable. So
Now, that's so important. The justice system is paying for his sins, and will pay for it probably for decades. The problem is, I think higher-ups in the judicial system, even in the Supreme Court, even in some of the federal judges, even in the FBI, CIA, other agencies, I think there's so much that needs to be cleaned up. I don't know if it's possible to clean it up in decades. I think we're making a good stab at it under Trump, but what happens after Trump and other people are gone? Is this going to continue to be cleaned up and legally sought after? I hope so, but it is yet to be seen. I think the corruption is so deep, so wide, that it might be almost impossible to do so. It's like asking the fox to go after the other foxes and leave the hen house alone. It's just not going to happen easily.
I believe, getting Comey on leaking or mishandling classified information, although important, is not as important as the overall larger conspiracy, how we got led down this whole idea of a Russia hoax, which we now know from the IG report he's definitely involved in.
Well, you know, I just think that consequences are important, and I think that the American people are interested in consequences because, you know what, the justice shouldn't depend on what level you are in society, not to suggest that there are levels. Now, I want to move on from Jim Comey, and I'm going
to end it here. There's other things she's going to talk about, but for me, they are not as important. Now, I was wrong, but he has been harassed and went after legally, and his wife's been after legally. But what he says here, as Nunes says here, is so important. We have to step the courts up, and the courts have to go after these things legislatively. We cannot stop these people. Legally, we have to go after them. There has to be lawsuits and other legal stuff done to go after them.
Well, what people have to understand out there is that, we're not going to be able to fight these fights just on the legislative battlefield. The left for decades has been using the courts. They've corrupted the courts. So we really need the third branch of government to step up and start to do their job. One of the ways that we can do this is by bringing cases to the courts. And so, I'm filing against Fusion GPS. There's no question. What were they trying to do at the end of the day? We were investigating them. And at the same time, they were smearing me, slandering me, and trying to intimidate me, doing things that, costing public schools a lot of money. These are all things that we need to prove in court, and I think that we'll get a trial date before Christmas. I think the American people will finally begin to heal once some of these operations are shut down. And
All right,
that's
yeah,
the bottom
now-
line, is these operations need to be shut down if we want to improve politics in this country and get back to a fair and a debate that's, really a debate that people expect us to have.
Right.
All right, and he's right there, but there's so much more to this. I think it's so wide, so deep, so massive, that this is the greatest legal civil war we've ever seen in our country. In my heart and in my mind, I feel that. And I don't know how long it's going to have to maybe even be worked on clear up to the time when Christ comes. But it is a mess legally and politically and power-wise like we have never seen before. And maybe it's always been going on and building up, but it is a super, super mess. All right, Dan, Johnny, Bongino, he's got some good points. Negative interest rates is one of them.
Use promo code Dan and you'll get 10% off. You'll support the show too. itargetpro.com, promo code Dan for 10% off. Okay. Before I get to this Comey stuff, I want to discuss just quickly this article I saw on CNBC, which I'll have up in the show notes because it's very, very dangerous for you, for your wallet, for your business, and it portends a dangerous economic future for the United States. Alan Greenspan, former Federal Reserve Chair, gave an interview yesterday, and he said, this is a Fred Imbert article at CNBC, it'll be in the show notes. Alan Greenspan says, quote, it's only a matter of time, end quote, before negative rates spread to the U.S. What is he talking about? Why does this matter to you? And why would I be a little bit worried? Think about what negative rates are. He's talking about negative interest rates. So you know what a positive interest rates are. Unfortunately, when negative interest rates people sometimes get a little bit confused. A positive interest rate is simple. I lend money to Joe, and I lend it to him at an interest rate based on his risk. I know Joe, lend money to Joe maybe 5% for a couple months. Joe gives me back my money plus 5%. That's as simple as that.
Yeah.
What's a negative interest rate? A negative interest rate is when it goes in the other direction. In other words, my money isn't making money as I lend it out. My money's losing money as I lend it out. If I gave Joe money at a coupon of negative 5% rate, Joe's going to pay me back less money, 5% less money than I gave to him at the end of the time period. Why are governments doing this, number one? We're seeing this phenomenon around the world. And this is why I never trust economists. I shouldn't say I never trust economists. I don't trust economists that take themselves too seriously. This was one of those things that was deemed impossible. We'll never go to negative interest rates around the world. Who would lend money to the government to get less money back later? The answer is a whole lot of people, apparently. Germany and others, we've seen negative interest rates. Why do governments love these things? Think about it. It's very simple. And why does this portend such a negative future for you if this comes here? Governments love negative interest rates. Think about the government's ability to lend money to its population and later on have to give them less money back. Sounds kind of like a tax. Yes, a tax. Government issues $1 billion in bonds. The public buys them up. The government gives back $900 million. Keeps the difference. Now, you may say, who would do that? A lot of people are doing that because the risk they deemed with this global catastrophe we're looking at of debt is that they're going to lose everything. So they're like, well, lose everything or just lose $100 million.
Well, this is scary, and we need to stay out of it. But Dan is right on top of it. We'll give you the full connection to this, too. This is Roger Mark from Billings, Montana. We'll give you both these videos. This is just a segment from both of them. Good day.